We are back from our break. Look, I'm just gonna say it. This is absolutely my favorite story in all of Pokemon games, movies, TV shows. Hands down, my favorite story that they told ever.
Tell me what you think the story is.
The story is about a bunch of kids who got bullied, and they are perceived as the bullies.
Well, that's my first catching point.
Okay. So you don't like the story at all, right, Greg?
I liked some of the story. I just think the bullying aspect is just pure nonsense. Because they start the game as bullies. They're bullying Penny. They have taken over sections of the map where they are bullying people and not letting them pass. And then we're supposed to be like, oh, because you were bullied before, we feel bad for you. Like, you became the thing that you were against. And that's not really a great lesson.
I think that you are right, but I think they wrestle with that because they by the end of it they're like they talk about that.
They do a little bit
what they didn't like.
They do a little bit, but also like the idea that nobody, like the biggest institution in Paldea that literally has students from toddlers to the elderly, had a section of the student body leave and the entire teaching staff and director resign. And everybody's like, I don't know. It changes all the time, I guess. I don't know. Where did Team Star come from? Nobody's talking about this. Our entire teaching staff left 1.5 years ago. And there's one person in the world that's like, I think they have a secret. You think everybody left? If everybody in Pokemon Go, if all of Niantic resigned 1.5 years ago and got completely replaced, we would still be talking about it.
I mean, yeah, because we talk about Pokemon stuff, but
it's like, this is the weirdest. Like, I liked their characters. I like the message of found friends at the end, but I think if you're going to bring up a subject like bullying, you need to actually have something to say about it, and that thing should make sense.
I think they absolutely do. I think each character has a characteristic of being bullied and why they were bullied.
Yeah, which is nothing particularly new.
No, I don't think so, but I think it's incredibly relatable. I think it goes back to Arvin's like dog dying. Like if anyone had a pet hurt or whatnot, that is incredibly relatable. Like I relate to almost every single one of like as a here's the thing, like if you were in, I think the story is relatable to literally everyone, because if you went to school, which I'm assuming everyone did listening to the show, you were either a bully, you were either bullied, or you witnessed bullying. And even if you were not bullied and you were not a bully, and you cannot sit here listening to this program or tell me on this program that you did not witness bullying happening. It's like a real thing.
I agree. I've said this before. I think the closer you are to having experienced that, the more relatable it is for you. Because I literally sat the entire time during all of that just rolling my eyes. Because I'm like, come on. Really? Come on. And that was it is... Like, it was written in a way that I literally rolled my eyes every time they brought the bullying things up. And again, I'm a lot older than a lot of people playing this game. And so people's experiences, the closer they are and the fresher those memories are, have a very different experience than I did with it, which was, this whole thing is nonsense to me. Absolute
oh my gosh,
nonsense.
yeah, I think the complete opposite. Like even as Giacomo, like to go why they're being bullied. So like Giacomo's being bullied because like of music and musical taste. And this was like really relatable to me because this was literally what I was bullied for in 11th grade and 12th grade was my music taste and my music choice. Like I went to a high school that was very big on like Fish. Like if you were not listening to jam bands and like if your favorite Pokemon was in Cherubi, you were 1,000,000% bullied. into oblivion because of literally just your music taste. Like Mela, like I cannot relate to that because I'm not a woman, but like being a tomboy and like being in the like woodworking class or being in like the mechanical class or being in we didn't have the car thing, automotive shop, like auto shop. We didn't like our school didn't have that, but we had like any. At least I saw that. Like if you were the one woman in woodworking shop, you were constantly made fun of. And that's just what happened. It sucked. You have Atticus, which I will argue like Atticus and Giacomo are not the same, although they both probably shop at Hot Topic. I understand that they both probably get their clothing and their merchandise at the same store, but they're not the same. Like Atticus, to me, fits more into like the goth / punk / whatever scene, but not related to music. That's like different. Also, the way they have Atticus talk is like, I like definitely got bullied for that. Ortega, they do two things, like the rich boy who doesn't fit in, but also like the gay boy who doesn't fit in. I think that's fine. I think if they just went with gay, which is a totally like easy thing to like that people got bullied for that, right? Like that's very easy to do. I think adding the rich thing and like, yeah, let's just do both here. I think that was totally acceptable and fine. And then Erie, again, I can't directly relate to that because I'm not a woman, but like, I think we all went to school with like, some people go through puberty before others, and there are young girls or young ladies who get really tall really fast, and some are really athletic. And in this case, they're doing like, this is a really tall, like, girl who is very athletic and then got bullied for that. Like, every single one is like somebody I went to middle school, high school, college with, and I can feel like I relate to like three of them spot on. And I think other people can too.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, I kind of can, but they all seem so many years later. They all seem very shallow depictions of the issues. Like they are very light brush strokes because they don't really like. We're going to talk about the fairy type leader being gay, but they don't really touch on what that experience is like at all. Like they sort of, it's just another thing that you're made fun of. And it's like, it's not really, and I get it. Like it is a game, so they're not going to do really deep dives, but also you could. But instead they sort of did very broad strokes. And ultimately I'm like, okay, like seen it, done it. It is really shallow, kind of relatable if I was a lot younger, but I'm not. Like I want something way deeper than these.
I think that's fair. I think it is very surface level, but I don't think that's necessarily necessary. necessarily necessary. I amuse myself. I'm with Steve on that. Like I felt like I felt affected by the storyline, even though it was pretty shallow, because like realistically, as you say, they're not going to go very deep into the individual stories. I think it would have been nice though. I think it would have been good. Like even if they had like side quests that would give you more information, so you don't necessarily have to do it to get to the end of the three storylines, that would be cool. Maybe there is, and I've just missed that. I'm not sure. I liked the little kind of cutscenes you get after defeating each of them that kind of give you a bigger story. Those are the bits that are definitely not told linearly, because you get the one for whoever you just defeated, and it's I find that quite interesting, getting those in different ways. So I struggled a little bit with Ortega, purely because it's like I feel I struggle to give people sympathy when they're like, oh no, I'm made fun of because I'm rich. Like, yeah, sure, right, fine. I'm sure that must be difficult for you.
I'm sure you cry on
I
your
really
bed of
struggle with
riches.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, it's nice that they got, you know, they stuck by the other Team Star members, though, even though they could have easily, you know, gone to like another school or moved somewhere with all that money.
Not to defend Ortega, but I think there is that. I think there is a difficulty in that, where like Ortega is very self-aware that they're rich, right? Like that is obvious.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with that it comes the perspective of like, are the people around me only around me because I am rich? And I think near the end of the game, it's very obvious that Giacomo, Mela, Atticus, and Erie are not around Ortega because he is rich. They are around him because they genuinely like him.
Yeah. That part of the story I liked a lot. Like, if it had been much more focused on the friendship and a lot less about this weird bullying incident that happened a year and a half ago that everybody forgot, even though it would have been a massive event, I would have been much happier with the story. And I think ultimately that's the part that I focus on because I enjoyed it. But of them, I just was like, I have seen this in every Pixar film since 2000, and they tend to do it better.
Well, yeah, of course Pixar's going to do it better.
So, like, when I come to this and you're going to... When you make a storyline that exists in a world where things do it better, you either do it different or you do it as well. And I don't think they did either. And that's my biggest problem with the bullying storyline.
I think they do it different. Like, they went out and they made their own bases. Like, they literally made their own safe spaces. They set their own boundaries to protect themselves,
which is a real common story for in the gay community. So, like,
right, like, and they did that whether people realized it or not. Of like, they're going to be protective of the space that they created, and they're going to have. I mean, in this world, the way you protect your safe space is Pokemon battles, right? Like that's just like we have people within our safe space that we trust, and in order, if you want to get into that, you have to have a Pokemon battle, and I think that's great. I also relate to the fact that like they stood up to the bullies, and the bullies ended up leaving or transferring schools or whatever it was, and they were then deemed the bullies. Like that is really relatable. Like, that happened in my high school. Like, that is a thing to do. And for I disagree with what Greg said of like everyone forgot. My school would rather have spent all of their resources trying to erase something bad that has happened instead of like actually addressing the correct issue. This is the same thing I have literally talked about time and time again in the Pokemon trading card game. Judges and the judges that you call over, they would rather side with the bully than to actually try to solve the issue. Like, bullying is a huge thing in the TCG. It is not people stacking their deck. It is not people putting 5 cards in instead of 4. It's not people who are drawing 8 cards instead of 6. The cheating that happens in the TCG is around people gaslighting you and bullying you into thinking that you made the wrong decision. And they do that, and then they call a judge, and then they bully the judge. They gaslight the judge into them being confident about a lie, and you on the other side being like, yeah, I don't really know what's happening. I don't understand his perspective. And the judge wants nothing to do with it. They will rather side with the bully. Like, this is so relatable to me on so many levels. And like, I 1,000,000% understand, like, yep, we don't know what happened. Everyone kind of left, and like that, like 1,000,000% relatable that they try to cover it up and move on. It literally happens in the Pokemon trading card game. That's like the thing. They like the history of competitive Pokemon, the TCG, the VGC, they spend more energy trying to cover up the bad things that have happened instead of trying to just address the issues. It literally happens in this game. It's so relatable. And that's not even like
I do. Yeah, I think. I feel like for this whole bit, I'm kind of in the middle of the two of you for this story bit, right? But I think I agree with both of you on that matter. Like, I do think that I don't think it's odd that they tried to cover it up. I don't think
it's odd that they tried to cover it up. I absolutely agree that they tried to cover it. That's the part I believed.
I think
that's the part
odd.
I'm like, oh yeah, they absolutely would. But those people in power wouldn't also just leave power.
Yeah, I think that's a bit odd. I also think it's a bit odd that we have, like, the first time you hear about this, assuming that you talk to them before you finish the story, is a random, like, child on a mountaintop says, "Hey, did you know that all the teachers
a random
left,
child
by the
does
way?"
it. And when I had secretly
Which is a bit weird.
I had secretly hoped that Nimona was one of their bullies, right? Like there would have to be a reckoning at the end, something interesting, and it didn't happen.
There's no way they would have done that, but yeah.
Oh, I know, but I would have loved it if
that's
they
like
did.
me. That's like me thinking that there's a possibility the dog dies, right?
yeah, I was gonna say that's like the
Like I knew it wasn't going to happen. I hoped it. I had hoped it would have.
we didn't talk about Clive. Great new character.
Oh goodness. Can I just say, right? For the people who are doing the whole thing they did with the masked, what's it called? The masked. Who's the fighter in Sun and Moon? The masked.
The Masked
Royale.
Masked Royale, right? You're doing the whole thing with that, right? Trying to be like, oh, who's Clive? In the game, they tell you who he is in this game.
They
right?
do
Like,
tell
you
you
can't
in
do
this
the thing. Don't do the thing twice.
The Masked
right? Do the
Royale
thing
is
with the
still a
Masked Royale.
mystery.
Go with that. That's fine.
No,
it's
Clive-
still funny, right?
Can you get Clive's
It's not
hair
funny.
in the game? Can you pick that
I
hairstyle?
don't know.
Don't know.
Shame. DLC. Clive's hair.
Yeah, I mean, didn't they add like Rose's hair in DLC? I think.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, I think they did. I think Clive showing up was great. Penny showing up at the end was of each interaction also great. I liked those, like I like the Team Star stuff. I said this in my preview for the Nintendo stuff when I played early. Like Nintendo was so strict around the Team Star stuff, and to me it seemed like this was the story they cared about the most, or the story that they were proud of the most, because they were not as strict for gym leader stuff. Like they were like, oh, talk about Gracias all you want, like talk about Cloth all you want. It made sense why they didn't want me to chase Cloth, because
Oh yeah.
obviously the second time you battle Cloth you get the Koraidon stuff, but I already had it all. Like my build was different. Like, so it probably would have just broke if I chased Cloth, because
You're right.
Yeah.
Right.
You could do that in a way that it doesn't break, but we all know that's not what they would have
That's
done.
not what's gonna happen.
right.
Plus, you played it on a PC. I heard.
No, it wasn't a piece of the Switch. It was in front.
Hilarious.
So, like, the thing I wanted to talk about the most after the Nintendo preview was how Mello walked, which in itself was great. Fantastic.
Have either of you ever tried to walk in boots that big?
No.
I
That
think
is
you
how
know
you
that
walk
I
in
haven't.
boots that big, because those boots do not bend if they're staying that stiff up. I have done that. It is not comfortable.
But like that was at the Nintendo preview event. I saw the same cutscene after you fight Mela, and that cutscene screamed to me, "Oh, they're doing a bully storyline," and the thing that all 5 of these people have in common is they've all been bullied. And there's not enough information there, right? The first time you see that cutscene, so I was like, "Oh, I'm curious of why they were bullied." And then for me to find out, like, they stood up to their bullies and they, quote unquote, became the bullies then was relatable, because that happened in my school. Not me. I was just always picked on. So just full disclosure, I was just constantly bullied. Like, I didn't become the bully or anything. But that was the thing I was most excited for. And to me, I thought that they can mess this up so easily. And I don't think they did. I mean, I can see Greg's point in, like, it was surface level, or maybe wasn't like as good as it was. But I really don't think they dropped the ball at the end. I think they did completely tell the story from start to finish, and I think it had a really solid ending. At least to me, I loved it.
I think they told a story, and I think again, the closer you are to it, the more relatable it is. The further you are from it, the absolute less relatable and the more nonsensical it is. And I don't disagree that of the three, it's a very solid plotline. Like, it's as solid as Arben's. I just think it's written in such a way that unless you have a very direct tie to it, it feels nonsensical. Like, it felt pretty much pure nonsense to me the entire time. And I think that is just how they wrote it, right? Like, they took a very shallow sort of, this is the expected points, these are the beats you have to hit, and they painted it by numbers. And you're going to experience that differently the more those numbers match up with your life.
Yeah, so the end, which led to we'll talk about the battles and the fights. I just want to wrap the story up. So you go through all 5, and then you get the Clive revealing that he is the he's the principal, right? Is that his official title?
He's
principal?
The director.
They use the word director.
Basically the principal in our
and that you have to meet him in the square, where he then reveals that he was Cassiopeia, which my first question is, you were standing there when Cassiopeia, which I think Cassiopeia is a constellation or something, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's also a mythical queen, but yeah, there's a lot.
That I was like, oh,
yeah, but Team Star, Greg.
I know,
like, it's
but
obviously
I'm saying,
talking about the constellation.
Like, they didn't just name Cassiopeia because it's a bunch of stars.
No.
It is relating to a specific person who was named.
Yeah.
They named those that constellation, after a specific person.
So he then reveals that he's Cassiopeia, which my first question is like, well, but you were standing there when Cassiopeia was talking to me, which he then, I say that out loud, which then the dialogue says like, oh, I pre-recorded it.
Yeah.
You battle him, and then after the battle, he reveals that he isn't actually Cassiopeia, and he was trying to get information, which I really liked that twist, because I think Pokemon does become super predictable, and I like that even if it was just for a second, or in this case, a full battle, like, I do like how he's like, I'm just gonna say I'm Cassiopeia, and you're like, oh, I thought it was Penny the entire time. I guess it's you. And then at the end, he's like, it wasn't me, and I was like,
oh,
okay. You got me for at least the battle.
I did not fall for that one bit. I'm like, it was obvious it was Penny from the beginning, and you protecting your student as you've done this entire time is also obvious. I know it's not you, and I know I'm going to face Penny in about 15 minutes. Like, this is not a surprise. I knew the minute this plot line started from the first phone call who this was.
I didn't again, I'm going to be in the middle. I didn't actually know I did actually know this, but that was because I'd accidentally spoiled myself on this one story beat, which was a bit frustrating.
You spoiled that it was
So I don't know
Penny?
what I would have thought. There is Penny, yeah.
Okay.
So I don't this is the problem with writing up my lists before I play the game of what to do in the game, is you sometimes accidentally come across spoilers. But
yeah, that's like the weird.
I did find it
culture.
really weird.
I was gonna say that's the weird
really
spoiler
weird.
culture of like I want to look at some stuff, but I don't want to look at other stuff. Like when I was looking at stuff for Legends, I was like, oh yeah, look at all these great Pokemon. Like that's all I want to see. And then like I saw that Volvo had Giratina, and I was like, well, I can't unsee that now.
Yeah. But I did find it really weird that you've essentially got like 4 reveals in a row. So you've got the reveal that Clive is Clavel, then you've got the reveal that Clavel is Cassiopeia, and then you've got the reveal that Clavel is not Cassiopeia, and then you get the reveal that Penny is Cassiopeia.
No, I
like,
love that.
Whoa,
I thought
whiplash
that was
from all
so
these reveals.
I thought that was so good.
Nah, I was just like, can we just skip this part because this is pointless? It's just another level check to get me to the end point. Can I just fight Penny, please?
I did enjoy the Clavel fight though. I think he was actually a reasonable challenge. He
Yeah,
shouldn't have been
I think
ridiculously
I
overleveled.
think like it was a good battle. I think all the battles for Team Star were good battles. After my first one, I knew what the pattern was, and they weren't difficult after that. When I had done one, I'm like, oh, I know. Okay, I know what happens. So I can take preparation going forward. But like, again, they didn't their plot lines are pretty much a straight line. There's not a whole lot of M. Night Shyamalaning happening here. I'm like, it's what I thought from the minute this happened, and yep, we're right exactly where I said we were going to be.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think the Clefel fight in itself was probably the best structured fight, assuming that you are not incredibly overleveled. I think it is the best set up fight. So, and let me expand on that. I went through the whole game with only water Pokemon. I did a mono-type water playthrough. I tried to lean into new Pokemon. There's a lot of old water Pokemon that exist, like Azumarill or Floatzel and stuff. So there are a lot of new water Pokemon. There's a lot of fish. But I didn't want to use Lumineon. Anyways, so for me, I didn't have a lot of instances where I was hitting super effective, right? Or I was like resisting. There were a couple battles where I was just at a complete disadvantage, which was like Iono, or I guess Brassius, but Brassius was not a challenge because I had wing attack on the duck. So for, after battling the Elite Four and the other people after the Elite Four, which we'll talk about next episode, the Clavel fight to me was the hardest. Not because he had, super effective Pokemon. I just think he had an actual strategy that he set up pretty successfully. Now, obviously, if you were to knock out his first two Pokemon fairly quickly, because I know some people are listening and they're like, oh, I didn't have a problem with it. You don't see that strategy. But if you don't knock out those two Pokemon, he'll start setting up Reflects. He'll start setting up Light Screens. If you break through that first one, his Abomasnow has a second chance of setting up Reflects and Light Screens. And why that's so important to the fight is because that allows the rest of his team to operate and like build that momentum that he's looking for, which I think is kind of the opposite in the Team Star fights, but I think they're still good. Whereas like the other fights, specifically some Elite Four stuff, you can kind of see what they're going for, but they don't specifically execute on that. I think it's the same. We'll talk about Iona and why I think Iona is one of the strongest gym leaders. But I always like to
care about.
What?
There's only one gym leader I care about.
Oh, yeah.
That's it.
But each gym leader does have some sort of strategy. Like almost all the trainers in the world have strategies. Like even in Sun and Moon, there's after you beat the first totem, there's a really rich trainer on the route. I can't remember what Pokemon they have, but if you don't knock out their Pokemon, they just max potion it. They have max potions at that. It's like a level 14, and if you get close to knocking them out, they just max potion it over and over. So you kind of have to get it to yellow and then knock it out, because anytime you get it to red, it just max potions. So there are a lot of strategies that are happening. I just think Clavel's team, again, if you don't have an answer for number 1 and number 2, he can actually set up properly. And again, just stressing, if you're over leveled or if you have a competent team and you know how to battle, you're going to get around it. But structurally, I think his team is really good.
Yeah, I blew past his first two Pokemon, and it was only until his final, because I didn't know what the move was, because I had never faced one, and I'm like, what is this doing? But once I saw it once, I'm like, oh, okay. I just need to switch to this, and then you're dead. Cool.
Yeah, I think especially if you're not over leveled, a lot of these battles, it doesn't take much to completely destroy your momentum. And then if you're outspeeded and you have a type disadvantage and you're not constantly switching out, then you're going to lose. You know that it doesn't take much for you to lose that battle if you don't know exactly what you need to do.
Speaking of being outsped, I think this is why the Team Star battles are harder than some of the gym leaders or some of the other battles. I don't think they're the most difficult thing in the world, but I think fighting 5 cars and the cars almost always going first, no matter what, really sets that apart. And it gave me big Clara. Oh, what's the other dude's name? The 2 people from the Isle of Armor. Not Arvin. Avery. It gave me big Clara and Avery vibes. Because the interesting thing about the Clara and Avery fights is they, like, quote unquote, cheat. I think Clara even states that she cheats.
Yeah, Clara states I just played that. She's like, I'm cheating.
Yeah.
Cool.
And the interesting thing about those fights is that they put something extra in the match that you're not used to. And the cars do this. The cars are almost like Mella's card has speed boost, but and I just thought like, oh, Clara's strategy is really good. She like delays, speed boost delays, and now she's going first. And the longer you let that match happen, the harder it is for you.
And
but
correct me if I'm wrong, the cars can't be statused, right?
Yes,
you can't
correct. You cannot put the car to sleep. You cannot paralyze the car.
Yeah.
You can't poison the car. So not only can the cars not be statused, but there's very few situations that you are going to go first. Like when I fought Giacomo, like I was over leveled. He was one of the very few fights I was like really over leveled just because I didn't know where he was, and that was fine. But I was like, oh, geez, like your car is still going first, and I think that's an important thing. Again, I'll bring up the Blaine situation. When you get to Cinnabar Island, you go inside. Blaine has 3, 4, 5, whatever fire Pokemon, and you surf, and you surf, and you surf, and you just knock them all out. And even if you don't knock it out, you know, you resist that, right? You resist the fire type move he's giving you. But in this situation, they're the ones always going first, and they're hitting you pretty hard, and you don't have that. I can't sleep it. I can't paralyze it. And I think that is kind of, I don't know if that's what I think should go forward, but I think that is more interesting than giving a gym leader an extra Pokemon or making the gym leader match your levels or making the gym leader a little bit stronger. You can always out level. You can always grind more to be stronger, right? Like if the gym leader's 40, you just go to 42 or 43, right? But I think the car always kind of going first and not being able to have a status condition, I think that's just so interesting. And I think that made those matches more fun and more memorable in a way of like, why was it difficult? Like, oh, because the car doesn't 100% act like a Pokemon. Those were my thoughts on it.
I mean, I think it's interesting, but it's also, why is it more difficult? Well, because they've handicapped you. They've taken away one of your tools, which is status effects.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they could handicap you in a lot of other ways too, right? Like, I don't know that that's necessarily like the big, like it makes them memorable, but it also, they made it difficult by literally giving you a handicap, which, okay, I mean, that is a way to solve for it. I don't know.
I think it works because because it's not like all 8 gyms, right? I think it works because it's.
I mean, I think it fits.
It separates it from the gym leaders.
I think it fits them thematically, and I think it works. But also, like, part of me is like, okay, but yeah, you took a set of tools away from me to make it harder, and if you take your set of tools away from anybody doing a task, like you can make a poster, you just can't use paint. Oh, well, this task has now become more difficult.
Yeah.
Because you're denying me paint. I can still do it, but is that more fun? And I think your mileage will vary if that's more fun. Well, I had a good time with it, but I do think there are going to be people out there who are like, well, you made it harder by handicapping what I can do.
They do this in Alola too. They give
Yeah.
you 2v1, which is some people. It's funny how for years people are like, I'm so sick of the gym leader stuff, and then they go to Alola and people are like, I want the gym stuff back. So I think this is an amazing compromise, right? They give you the 8 traditional gym leaders, and then they give you 5 Team Star, and then they give
I
you
agree.
5 Titans, and I think they made them all pretty unique. Which I think is fantastic. So instead of just... Do you guys remember when we reported on? Well, we reported on and then very quickly reported on, because it was the same episode, that there was a rumor that Sword and Shield was going to have 18 gyms, and then...
That's exactly what I was just
Yeah,
thinking.
I thought
Oh,
it was
16
16.
gyms, but yeah.
16
gyms.
gyms, yes. And my first thought was, I'm pretty tired of the game once I get to gym 8. And that's my personal thought. Like, I'm like, usually after 8 gyms, I'm like, let's hit the Elite Four. Let's
Yeah.
get credits. I'm ready for post game. And when I read 16 gyms, I was like, oh, why? That doesn't, like, the pacing of that sounds bad. Like, I'm already exhausted by 8. Obviously, that rumor only lasted about an hour before it was, like, disproven. And so this, I think, was great. Like, whether or not you think Team Star is hard or easy, I think how they differentiated it was
Close enough.
close enough. And this and the Titan stuff, I think, really made it feel refreshing instead of like, well, you got 10 more gym battles. I hope you liked the other ones.
Yeah, I think that is, I was, before you mentioned that, I was actually thinking, hey, we finally got the 16, well, 18 in this case, gym battles. I think that is a better way to do it, though. If you want more, make them different. Because I think if you just want, I just want to become the champion, you can just do that and you can ignore the other stuff. You're not going to, let's be honest, but you could if you really wanted to. I don't think anyone's actually going to just play through one of the 3 stories and then not do the others. I will say there is one problem with all these things, the Team Star stuff, the Titan stuff, and as you say in the previous games, with Sun and Moon, the
Totem.
why can I never remember words? The totem Pokemon. I think the problem with them is that they only really work the first time, and then they work because of the surprise, and that does make them interesting and memorable the first time you do them, but it doesn't necessarily make replays interesting.
It's almost like I said this about the map and how they should surprise you, and
No,
it
but
works.
They're not the same thing, Steve.
No, it's not.
They're not the same thing.
But the one thing I did think that should have been different is I thought that going into each camp would be a slightly different test you had to solve. Not everyone was going to be just knock out 30 Pokemon in 10 minutes using this,
or
kind
at
of
least be more
clunky, let's
difficult,
go.
because that was not difficult. I think it was an interesting way, and clearly it only existed to get you to use the Let's Go feature, because you don't have to use it in any
Right.
other part of the game, and it teaches you that. But it wasn't. I got most of them done in like 2 minutes.
Okay, so
Of the 10 minutes.
that feature exists for a specific reason. It's and the 2 reasons actually. Number 1 is to teach you type weakness, which I don't care what, like, the people listening to the show, most of them will be like, "What? That's dumb." There are so many like just have you ever done a random raid with people after post game and they just bring in Koraidon or Miraidon and they don't look at type weakness? It's just, people don't get it. If so, in my preview in New York, it's hard for me to give my exact personal playthrough, because again, I went through with all water Pokemon, and I don't think any of the Team Star had anything resisting water. Yeah, they don't. So when I brought my Cetitan, I led Cetitan because I forgot that Cetitan was ice, because I'm dumb. And then I brought like 2 other Pokemon. And in that Team Star battle, the Let's Go thing, my Cetitan died instantly. So what they are doing is they are checking to see if you have 3 Pokemon that could actually do the fight. So even though like you can go in and be like, oh, it was really easy because it's dark, so I brought in 2 fighting Pokemon and a water Pokemon, and I blazed through it. That's what they want. They're literally level checking you at that point. If you went in to the dark and you put 3 psychic, you would fail. You would fail it. Like,
I think that's fair, but also I'm not sure that's done hugely well, because there's no feedback as to the reasoning there. Like, I think you get that if you lose to the leader, I think you get like these are good types. I think, if I'm remembering correctly, it goes, these would be good types to go with. But I don't think you get that if you lose. Well, actually, I guess I didn't do it. Maybe it does say that.
I don't know,
because I've just said that I didn't lose to them.
I get the level check part of it, and that's fine. And I think it works the first time. It's just by the 5th time of having to use that feature, I was like, I would really like the front part to feel as unique as the boss I'm about to face. And it's always the same let's go feature where I'm just walking around sending them out. I thought there should have been or could have been some other aspect to make each base feel a bit more unique, because by the second time I did that, I'm like, I'm already over this. The third time I'm like, just come on, I don't even care. I'm not even going to try.
Even just having more variety of Pokemon, because I found that there were like 4 different Pokemon in each of them, and they just kept on sending out the same 4 Pokemon.
Yeah, I think a thing that we haven't even talked about is, most Pokemon games, people go through with maybe 6 or 8 different Pokemon, right? When you get to like the 7th or 8th gym, the likelihood that you're going to remove one of your 6 members for a new member is pretty low. There might be a Pokemon that you absolutely fall in love with at like gym 7, and you're like, I want you on my team. I'm kicking off, I don't know, like Wooloo or something, and now I'm going to like spend some time to level you up, so you like, that's the other part, right? Like, even if you found a Pokemon that you're in love with by the time you get to the 7th gym, it might not even be the correct level as everyone else. And I think one of the unspoken things about this game is because there are 8, like, I actually find it weird if somebody went through all 18 badges with the same 6 Pokemon. Like, in a game with 400 Pokemon and twice as many badges, I kind of think it's weird that you're just like, I'm just going to use 6. I think it's weird. Like, there's so many Pokemon to choose from. There's so many new ones. There's so many returning ones. There's new moves. There's new abilities. Like, you didn't feel compelled to switch out stuff?
No.
No.
Like that's just shocking to me. Like,
why?
even in my all water playthrough, I went through like 10 to 12 different water Pokemon.
I found the 6 that I liked a lot, and I kept them. These are my.
I switched.
This is my team. We're rolling Paldea together.
But even in like the anime, Ash has like 12 Pokemon, and he'll call certain Pokemon when he needs them.
I have 15. I didn't need to ever call them. They're good. I called them out for I called up my Toad. Good or whatever his name is to go.
Toad's
cool to go paralyze things when I was catching them. But other than that, get back in the box, because my team and I are going to go take on this gym. We are here.
Yeah, my eyes are on the final. My eyes are on the final battle, right? So I'm creating a team that has good overall type strengths and defenses, right? Like, I'm not really thinking about things. Like, I will look at one and go, oh, that's cool. Will it work for me? And there's a couple of times that I'll switch Pokemon out. But yeah, I'm certainly not... I maybe used 8 Pokemon in my first playthrough.
Like, even against Giacomo, when I realized I was over-leveled, and I could tell that because of the Pokemon in the area. I was like, oh, the Pokemon in the area are only like... I think Giacomo is like, what? He's like 18, 19, I think?
Nah, he's like 20.
I was like, oh, like I'm like 25, 26. So like, I was like, I'm going to bring my 3 weakest water Pokemon, because like they don't really see it. Because I was limiting myself to, like, if a gym leader had 3, I brought 3, because that was a fun way for me to do it. I don't suggest that everyone should do it that way, but I was like, oh, I'll just bring like the 3 that don't really see a lot of play, because I'm like slightly over leveled, and I usually box these 3 for the gym or whatever. So yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. It's just it's just funny how, like, I mean, I'm sure the same thing is, in a game like Elden Ring, where you have so many spells, so many summons, so many different weapons, and I'm sure there are people that are just like, I'm just going to use this sword the entire time, and it's like, well, you have so many different options that you can use.
And like, I'm good with this one.
What?
But I'm good with this one.
Yeah, I mean, like,
I don't
but
need
Elden
the
Ring
other
does
ones.
a
I'm
Elden Ring
good.
has Elden Ring has like a situation where like certain bosses are resistant to magic. So if I'm running an all magic build, this dragon doesn't take magic damage, so I have to switch to a sword, and I have no strength or dexterity in sword use. So like, do I try to brute force it with magic, which is doing little to no damage because that's my highest stat, or do I try to switch to a sword and learn this sword even though it does more damage, even though my stats aren't in that?
Well,
And I think Pokemon tries to do that, right? Like, or at least this game is trying to do it, of like giving you so many different fights of like, you know, if one of these team star people were electric, me personally, I don't know how I get around that, right? Like, I think a lot of people didn't struggle with.
I mean, you use Gastrodon. Like, it's one of your favorites.
Right. Well, I didn't.
Like-
Well, when I fought the electric gym, I didn't have Gastrodon at that point, so like that was, you know,
You could have.
I could have, right? I could have. I didn't have one at that point.
I mean, you did not seek out your ride or die team like some of us did. I mean,
Yeah,
I will
sure,
say
sure.
that the like I had. I mean, I will say that there was one time when I found Tinkaton or Tinkatink that I was like, I am now making a swap. I am booting Fairy Dog for this incredible top tier Pokemon.
Sure.
And that was probably one of the only changes. I mean, even when I found Ice Godzilla, I'm like, Ice Godzilla, I love you. You are my sweet child, and I will cherish you forever post game. Because Papa's
it
got
depends.
a team, and we got to roll.
yeah, I think it depends on what you're looking for, right? Like, for me, Pokemon isn't about the battles, right? Like, I'll do the battles, and some of them might vaguely interest me. But what I like about Pokemon is the collection, and
Yeah.
so I do my second playthrough, which is where I basically collect and evolve everything as early as possible. And that's I guess my equivalent, whereas you would much more enjoy going through a story with a variety of those Pokemon rather than kind of just catching them and boxing them, essentially. Like those
Yeah,
it's just different.
there's just so many new Pokemon here, and there's so many opportunities to try them in battle. And if you're in a situation where you're over leveled, like let's say you did all the gyms except you missed the Psychic gym. Let's not talk about gyms. Let's say you did all the Team Star people and all the gyms, and you missed Atticus. And, you know, Atticus is what, like 35-ish, 36, I think?
Oh, is that the poison one?
The poison one.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, my whole team's 50 and he's 36. Like, I caught Clodsire and I caught all these other Pokemon. Like, why don't I try these Pokemon for this fight?
Or
Why
don't I just
wipe 'em?
steamroll it? 'Cause
Yeah, you could.
I don't care. My team and we're on a journey. It's me and my 6 buds. Nobody else.
Sure.
We have closed the doors. These are my 6 friends. I don't trust any of you. Get in the box. You're pretty to look at,
there are
but
some
you have
people
no spot in my life.
who just do their starter, right?
My starter was with me my entire journey.
No, I'm saying there are some people who just only use their starter. They don't care
true.
about anyone else.
True.
That is
Well,
there was a
true.
survey
Your
in
best
Japan.
friends.
There was a survey in Japan leading up to Sword and Shield. It was the secret club. The secret club. You had to like pay like $8 to get into the
We
Pokemon
gotta
secret
wrap
club.
this thing up. We've been going on for way too long.
And we could just break these into 2 episodes actually.
We're gonna have to because this is almost an hour.
So there was the Pokemon Secret Club, and you paid $8, and then you would get stuff. But anyways, there was a quiz, or not a quiz, but like a poll, and one of the polls was, do you prefer to use one Pokemon or do you prefer to use a full team? And 45% of people in this poll said they would prefer to use one Pokemon, which is, I mean, it's just shocking. I obviously Japanese audience specifically because that's what the secret club was, but that's still a lot of people that are like, yeah, I'll just use one Pokemon. It's fine. I'll just use my starter. It's fine. Like there's different ways to play Pokemon for sure. And I think even though, like Greg said earlier, is handicap the right word? Or are we allowed to? Is there a better word?
Handicap is a term for multiple. It is not when you're talking about a person who is disabled or differently abled. but handicap exists outside of that, and when
Look,
applied
I don't wanna step
outside
on
of that
anyone's
is
toes.
okay.
I like the handicap they give because I do think it forces you to play the game differently. And I think sometimes people need that push. Like in my situation, right? I went like the thing I hear is I wish the gym leaders would like I wish you didn't have to I wish like the gym leaders would block it so I can't use items. Well, no one is telling you need to use a potion or a revive. Like you can choose to not do that yourself. But I sometimes I think that people need that quote unquote handicap to then think or play differently. Like if your strategy is always to paralyze everything, which is very a viable strategy. Like hey, you can't outspeed the car. Cool, I'll paralyze it. Guess what? You can't. You then have to kind of rethink your team differently, or at least your strategy differently. Like I always do this, I always do that, and I think that I would like to see more of that instead of because I do think we're at a point where, again, I don't need it to be harder, but I think those battles become more memorable, can be more memorable, or can force somebody to then reevaluate how to play instead of just going in and hitting the super effective.
Yeah,
just
I
like
mean,
my example in Elden Ring, I've been using magic for the last 30 hours. I want to beat this dragon. I can't use magic, so I have to do something else. Or I could just ignore the dragon. I could just go. I don't have to beat the dragon. I could just go around it.
It is a for I mean, the hope is that it makes more people excited than it makes people frustrated.
Yes.
And whenever you do that, you run the risk of frustrating a large part of your audience. And whether or not that happens, I don't know. There are bigger issues in this game to talk about than whether or not you couldn't paralyze the car, right? There are way worse things that have been happening in this game than that. So I don't know that we'll ever get a definitive answer. I think if the game ran perfectly, we could hear more of people who really liked that and having to think strategy versus people who found it absolutely frustrating and that forced them to stop playing the game. Because that is a risk that you run. Or like, I'm just never going to do that plot line because I don't ever want to play the game that way. It's hard to say. I think for longtime people like us and people listening to the podcast who have been listening to the podcast for years, it was a fun and exciting challenge.
Yes.
I don't know that translates to people who this is their second Pokemon game, this is their first Pokemon game. I can't say that universally this is a beloved choice, but I think for us on the podcast and longtime fans, I think it was the first time, oh, this is really interesting.
Yes.
From then on, it was boring to me. I'm like, okay, I just know I can't do these things, and I know they're going to have some gimmick, so I just need to plan accordingly and put these things out, and I'm going to switch my moves around maybe, or not. I'm just going to go in, and I know I have coverage.
I think this is actually where one of the things I really love about this game is that you will have people like that who like get frustrated by that, and they can, like in previous games, they can just put it down. Or if you really like collecting, you can collect 380 out of the 400 Pokemon without doing any of the badges or any of the Titans.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time you've done that, you're going to be way over leveled. You can go and trash anything you want, right? So it allows you, I love the flexibility of that, the ability that you can go, oh, I don't care about the battles. I'll go and spend 20 hours collecting and then just spam through that rest of the bit to get to the final bit of the game to catch the rest of the Pokemon. Whereas you couldn't do that in previous games. There was no ability to do that.
Yeah, I think so. It's like three things on my part, and then we could talk about Penny, and then we can wrap up. One is I think if you do struggle, I think this is why the level, like not having scaling levels or a level cap is kind of a good thing, because the game is offering you a traditional Pokemon experience through the 8 gyms. And I think like if this is your first Pokemon game, you might struggle with it, but like that's the traditional experience. Get the 8 gyms, and then the Titan is like, again, even if you're struggling or you don't understand, you have Arvin there to help you. And then this would be the harder thing. I don't think anyone's going to debate that Team Star isn't the hardest. There will be people that will say like, I didn't struggle with it. Great, that's not the point we're making. The point we're making is out of the 3 paths, Team Star is the harder of the 3. So
it has a higher difficulty level because of the things they force you to do.
Because of the car. And so like if players were struggling with this, they can overlevel, they can come back, right? So I think that is a solvable issue. I think for longtime players, they see something that might force them to be different. So I do see it as like a win-win, right? Like a win-win for long-term players to be like, oh, I'm forced out of my comfort zone. And then for new players, like, oh, this is a little more difficult. But the answer is just to like come back or overlevel. And then I think of like future battles in like a Gen 10 or in a whatever black white 3, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily gym battles, but if they do the 18 badges again, it'd be cool if you fought somebody where it was like constant sun. Like no matter what you did, the sun was always out. So if you were fighting like a fire type gym leader, cool, water type moves are reduced because the sun is out. It's going to be quote unquote harder. Or a water type person where constant rain is out. Although that benefits the thunder, you would always hit 100% thunder. But you know what I'm saying? Like there are different mechanics that you could just put that I think that I'm glad I saw here, and we saw that earlier. We saw that in Isle of Armor, Crown Tundra, where they put effects in, and I was like, oh, these are really interesting for us, for people who have played a lot of Pokemon games.
I will say I forgot that Clara did that, and since I was playing with my all-star favorites, I went in and I was like, oh, Roserade, go, and Roserade ate up all the toxic spikes, and I'm like, that was nothing. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yummy,
yeah.
yummy, yummy.
I mean, there's always an answer to something. Like somebody commented on the YouTube that like it would be impossible to beat like a gym leader with like a level 5 Pokemon. Or so I think Alan and I had this conversation last time where I was like, oh, I could beat Mela with like a level 5 Pokemon. And I think Mela's what, like level 28, level 29. So you can evolve Charcadet into Ceruledge at any level. You just need the malicious armor or whatever it's called. Is that? I think it is called malicious armor.
Yeah, it's malicious armor. And
so Ceruledge is Fire Ghost, and it has the ability, Flash Fire?
Flash Fire.
So the car, let me tell you the car's moves. Overheat, Blazing Torque, Screech, Swift. Can't overheat you. Can't Blazing Torque you. It can Screech you all you want. Can't Swift you. I'm not cheating. It's just that this Pokemon, it's 26, by the way, level 26. It can literally not hit a level 1 Ceruledge. You win. That's it. That's what it comes down to. You win.
You win eventually. Boy, is that a long, boring battle.
Sure. You can also go to Ganon right off the gate. Is it going to be a lot harder and take forever? Absolutely. You can do it, though. That was the whole point I was trying to make last week. There are so many situations where if you understand abilities, type weakness, the movesets that they have, the movesets you have, you can win.
You can.
Is it harder if they have 6 Pokemon? Absolutely.
If you know the exact puzzle and you have the exact puzzle pieces, you can win. Like that is a given in any game. If I know the puzzle and I know the exact key, cool.
And I think in something like Elden Ring or Zelda, the key is your ability to dodge.
Right. I mean, the difference I think where people bristle against it is in Zelda and Elden Ring, there is a level of your skill that comes into play, and in Pokemon, there are just pieces of a puzzle you can put together to unlock the key, and that's a very different experience.
Sure.
That's a very different experience, and whether or not you find that more rewarding or not is your personal view.
Right.
There is a skill in figuring out the puzzle, though.
Yes, 100%. Like when I was fighting Clavel, that's his name, right? Clavel. When I was fighting Clavel, my option was to hit a super effective move against Meowscarada or Icy Wind, which did little to no damage. The answer was to Icy Wind because I needed that speed drop to ensure that my last two Pokemon could knock out Meowscarada. But so many people were like, oh, why didn't you hit the super effective move? Like that's not the win condition there. There's a really funny video of Joe Sarumi battling Leon with Ash's team. I did the same video because I was like, oh, that's a fun idea. That's like really neat. Like I should battle Leon with Ash's team. And in that battle, it was like Charizard versus, I think, Pikachu. And I was like, oh, he needs the Electro Web here because he's not going to, because Charizard's going to outspeed. And if he doesn't Electro Web, he loses. And he doesn't. He Volt Tackles and does like half of Charizard's health. And then Charizard knocks him out. And then his last Pokemon comes in. It's a Dracovish, which has obvious type weakness or type advantage. And Charizard just outspeeds and knocks out the Dracovish. And it's like, well, the win condition is you slow down Charizard, you get the guaranteed knockout with Dracovish, you win. But you decided to opt for the more damage move. So anyways, the point is, like, there is a skill in Pokemon, but Pokemon is so informational based.
Yeah, I mean, there is a wealth of knowledge you have that it's very different. It's a different set of skills, and knowledge is a harder thing to grow, because it's a harder memory and response work a lot different than muscle memory does.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it is a very different, and we aren't, as a society, very great at memory and knowledge-based anything. Like, we don't have a lot of things to build that up like we do for muscle memory and other things. We are real good at repetitive tasks to make your hands do the things without you thinking. It's called typing.
Your Pokemon muscle memory is constantly opening the Pokedex because you're trying to roll like you could in Legends.
Oh, no, mine is crouching at the Pokemon Center because I hit B to back out of the menu.
Okay, I thought I was the only one doing that.
No. Have you not seen that comment? The comic of the person?
I saw the little comic, and I was like, oh my gosh.
Goodbye. Yeah, every time. Except if you're like me, it's a 30% chance that exact move will cause your game to crash. The amount of times that I've
likes
crouched...
to crash when I put the controller down for 5 minutes and then I pick it back up to play.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but as long as I keep moving, my game never crashes. But the second I stop and for more than 5 minutes, the game is like, how dare you?
How dare you put me down?
It's like how sharks die when they stop swimming.
Yeah.
Anyways, we'll probably wrap this up in the next 5-10 minutes here. Penny. Penny fight, I mean, she has an Eevee backpack. R.I.P. Glaceon didn't make the cut. I think Espeon also didn't make the cut.
Espeon doesn't make the cut
for her team. When I see a team of 6 Eevees on competitive ladder, it does, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be it's never exciting because they can do a lot of great things. Like, I think almost all of them learn Baby Doll Eyes. Some of them are super fast.
I mean, her
Sylveon
team all has Baby Doll Eyes. It's Baby Doll Eyes for days.
Sylveon in itself hits very hard. I think the only Eevee that's pretty laughable on ladder or just in anything is Flareon, but the rest of them are pretty can be pretty threatening. I will say I was worried I can just give you my experience. As an all-water team, I was like, this should be okay. And then I forgot about Leafeon. And Leafeon is very fast compared to my water Pokemon. I don't have any ice-type moves, so I didn't have that coverage. Obviously, no fire-type moves. I was like, if I'm going to lose to Leafeon. And my thought process is, well, Gastrodon is the ace here, because Gastrodon destroys Jolteon. And Gastrodon has no problem against Flareon or the other ones. So I need to keep Gastrodon alive for after Leafeon. Leafeon took out 4 team members. It took 4 team members to shut down Leafeon. But then after, because I think Leafeon's number 2. And then Gastrodon was able to take out their 4 team members. So it was really funny to see like this this perspective of like, I'm going to lose. Like, you just ripped through 4 of my members, and then my Gastrodon was able to rip through 4 of their members after the Leafeon was down. I thought the fight was fun. I think they did a great job with her, like, caring and then but being scared at the same time, because I think that in itself is relatable. Of like, I care so much, but I don't want to push the boundaries where like all of a sudden they don't care about me. Like, where's the line of like? I thought that was relatable, but I don't know what your fight or thoughts on Penny were.
Sylveon, meet Gigaton Hammer. I'm sorry. There's a new reigning fairy in town, and it's got a giant hammer, and it crushes your soul, and it did. Wow. Penny's storyline of I'm worried about my friends, and I don't know because I've never met them. I like, again, of the Team Star stuff, I liked the friendship aspect. I think that was done well. I think it's good for a game that has a worldwide audience to say you can still be friends with people you've never met and you only know them online. It was a nice thing to say out loud. Was it surprising? No. Was it deep? No. Was it heartwarming? Sure. I think Penny's character, I knew exactly who she was from the minute I got the first phone call, so I can't say that I was ever surprised. I can't say that like I was shocked by her characterization. I think she has a solid arc. I think one thing I will say about this game is the individual characters that you meet, they give them very solid arcs. Arvin has a very solid arc. Penny has a very solid arc. Pneumonia has a straight line. It's kind of a little arc. We don't talk much about her, but those two have really good human stories, and I think, again, if Pokemon takes anything back from Sun and Moon and from Scarlet and Violet, is make your stories human. Make them human. Make them in the people, and the people are the focus, because that's when it sings.
Yeah, I mostly agree with that. I think Penny, other than being Cassiopeia, the recluse that you end up becoming friends with was not exactly surprising to me. Her battle I didn't find massively challenging. I suspect that's probably because, my thing is building out a good breadth of types coverage.
Yeah, same.
So
Right.
the EVs aren't difficult to take down when you have 6 Pokemon with a huge amount of type coverage. Exactly. Yeah. So my only real type coverage, interestingly, which I'm sure we'll talk in the next episode, was I didn't have any water. Which wasn't particularly.
I took all the water.
You took all the water.
Which wasn't difficult in this battle because you have a Flareon, which is very easy to take down with a rock move, right?
Yeah.
Like there's nothing difficult in that aspect.
Yeah,
So,
Flareon was
none of them have dual types, so there's nothing complicated you have to do in your head. You see water, you go electric or grass. You see grass, you go fire. That was pretty easy. I can see how it would be difficult if you're putting those restrictions on yourself, which you like to do.
Yeah, I think even if I had a normal team, which I assume most people listening to this have normal teams of trying to cover everything, I think Clavel is by far harder. I think Penny was more
Yeah,
like
definitely.
Penny's fight. I
Yeah.
don't think was supposed to be like difficult. I think it was like, let's battle. Okay, like she never came across as somebody who like screamed, I have a very good team, like Erie did, right? Like Erie's team had really good coverage, even though it was all fighting.
I mean, that does bring up the one point that did bother me about it, is she was supposed to be the best who taught them all how to battle, and you have a team of all Eevees. Like, and you're not even as difficult as the director is. So,
no,
like,
Erie was the one that taught everyone how to battle, not her. Erie,
her whole
Erie's
thing was
storyline was she taught the other four how to battle.
maybe could be. She was also supposed to be like, if they see me lose, I'm the top, I'm the big boss, and I'm like, well, you're easy to beat. Like, how has somebody not beaten you before?
Well, I think the reason that they'd never managed to beat her before because you had to go through everyone else to do that first, right? Their rules around what they built out require you go through the 5 leaders to get to her first. And then you get to the 5 leaders by going through the bases in that particular structure. So she had to make you go through everyone. Otherwise, she would just come to the beginning and say, "Defeat me," right?
Right.
You know.
Yeah. That's part of the story that I like is, you know, they created a perception that they were super difficult, and I think with the, you know, creating their safe spaces of like, this is my home, these are my people, this is what I'm protecting, is in itself like, oh, I'm gonna go around that. I'm gonna ignore that. Like, I don't want to mess with that. When in reality, like, no one really challenged them until you do, because there was this aura of like, oh, we just leave Team Star alone.
I didn't comment it. I did feel like, oh, why am I doing this? Because if this is indeed your people and your safe space, I'm just coming in and plowing you all down and making you break up. Why?
I think the point was that
I know
it wasn't just it wasn't just that it's a safe space, because they continue having those safe spaces after the main game. It's just that the structure they'd gotten themselves into wasn't the best way to do it.
There's a lot of muddling of what they wanted to say with this with this plotline that did not sit well with me.
I don't know. I think they said it very well. I found it very relatable, but
yeah, I mean, I will say this back to the people who said this to me. If they'd written it better, I would have related to it more.
I mean, I think it was written better. That's what I said about Sun and Moon.
That's what I say about Sun and Moon. So if you're going to say that to me, I get to say the same back to you.
No,
if
totally
it was
fair.
written better, I would have related to it more, and I didn't.
Totally fair. I still stand that I love the way the dialogue is written in these games. I think especially like Arvin, and as we'll talk about Nimona next time, but even though like I don't think her character arc is an arc, I think it's kind of a line. I think how she talks, her little speech bubbles that you read, I think they're so witty and so funny, and I think that applies to a lot of characters throughout this entire series. These 2 games.
This game needs some level of voice acting.
Yes, I think it needs at least a master's treatment.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about, like, I did not enjoy the Breath of the Wild voice acting.
I didn't either.
Because I found Zelda's voice so off-putting, and maybe it's the anti-English bias in me. I don't know. She felt so posh. And by the way, for listeners, that's a joke. I'm not actually biased against English people.
Soul screaming against
so,
the English.
Cringy whenever it happened, and you're just like, I would rather it wasn't there. I'm not clamoring for voice acting in these things.
No, I'm not either. And I'm worried that if they do go even the Masters route, I'm worried that it's just like, I think of Ocarina of Time where Navi is just like, hey, listen, hey. And that's a very obvious, like, everyone makes that joke. But like, when you're in a world, you know, for Sword and Shield, for me, it was 2,000 hours. For Sun and Moon, it was 1,200 hours. For Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee, it was 900 hours. When you're in a world that long, do you want to hear like, hey, listen, hey,
well,
wow, catch, wow.
We have an example of how it actually could work, which is Final Fantasy XIV, which is the cutscenes are voice acted and the rest isn't.
Yeah.
And I think the cutscenes having voice acting lends them more weight and gives a bigger feel and serves. Like, we'll talk about it in the gym section, but one gym leader definitely could have really had a great moment of voice acting. You just sort of have to read it, and the reading of that does not convey the same power as if it was voice acted in the style that it was presented.
I think gym leaders would have benefited from voice acting.
I think all of them could have, but I think I'm not saying like things in the world constantly chirping at you, because that doesn't happen in Final Fantasy XIV, but for big important cutscenes, they come in and they have voices, and those are very powerful moments, and they really sing. They're also really great for accessibility because people have reading comprehension problems.
That's true.
The worst way we communicate is by reading only, so people will read tone differently. If they're in a bad mood, those dialogues can come off as very brisk or annoying. That voice acting helps solve. So in cutscenes, I do think this game, in a lot of places, would have benefited from voice acting.
Yes. We're not there yet, though. Maybe
no,
Gen
we're
10.
not. The game can't even run, much less get a voice out. So,
well, I mean, I was gonna say even the cutscenes struggle to load in and then load out for some odd reason, but, anyways, so we're breaking these up into 2 episodes.
Is this over forever? I have to check back at work.
Yeah. So next week for episodes 5 and 6, because we did actually, I think, plan about 6. One should be the gym leader story, and then one should be like kind of end of the game. Like we were going to go up to Nemo, to like the Elite Four, and then stop, and then everything afterwards, which is after Arvin, after the Elite Four. That in itself was 1 episode as well, and then that should be the series. We could do a 7th of like overall thoughts. We'll see how it goes, but
depends how long we spend talking.
Yeah,
yeah.
There's not a lot to talk.
I was happy with I mean, we recorded this all in one session, but it'll be broken up into 2. I thought it was great. I know some people expressed a little bit of frustration in episode 2. I think we were all frustrated for different reasons. But that's fine. Like, just a disclosure here, like,
still love the discussion.
We all left that like pretty like happy. We were like, yeah, that was a good episode. And there was part of me that was like, do I cut the misunderstanding I had with Greg, which happens all the time. Me and Greg, it's me. I misunderstand Greg all the time. Happens all the time. If you're listening to the audio podcast, Greg is shaking his head. But the problem with me cutting that is it makes it seem like I'm not listening to Greg. So if I just cut it and get to the point where like, okay, there's a point in that episode where we're like, oh, okay, we're all on the same page now. And if I cut it, I think it's just a big disservice to Greg or to Al, whoever was like we were all talking about the other things, of them being able to express their point. Because if I misunderstood it, I am sure there are other people that also misunderstood it. And I think that's important. And I think it's important that like we can have disagreements and still get to the end where it's like, I understand what you're saying, Greg. I disagree with you about the map, but I understand what you're saying. I understand where you're coming from. So that's why I kept it in.
Can we talk about one thing that about this game that frustrates me? When a Pokemon that you're trying to find appears while you're in the battle, and when you get out of the battle, they're nowhere to be found.
You should have done a better battle. They would have watched you if the battle was more interesting.
It sat there the entire time. Instead, I have this creeper Psyduck who always shows up behind me and is staring at me. I have a creeping Psyduck stalker, and it freaks me out every time.
I did have an amazing moment when I came out of a battle, and there were like 6 Buizel all surrounding me in a circle, all ready to pounce as I came out of the battle, which was just very funny. Oh, I just remembered one last Team Star thing that annoys me. See if you jump into one of the bases from somewhere.
Oh, I never tried that. I was going to.
Oh, this is not where you're meant to come in. Go back to where you were and come in through the gate. And you're like, okay, sure, fine. I understand that because that's your rules, but then what happens in the game is you're back where you were. So I jumped off a cliff into a Team Starbase, and then after this quick cutscene, I was back on top of the cliff. How did I get back on top of the cliff?
Yeah, they made
My
you.
Miraidon can't climb cliffs yet. It doesn't make any sense. Put me at the front door.
They dragged you up hardcore by the scruff of your neck and threw you up there.
I never did that because I was just worried that the game would crash.
That's valid. That was absolutely valid.
Because I think in Legends, if you jumped into where Cresselia was behind the gate, it broke. And it took them like 3 weeks to patch that, where like it would say like catch Cresselia, but you already did, and then it would never complete that quest line. And they did end up patching that in Legends to fix it. And I was like, I don't want to risk breaking this game by jumping into the base when I'm not supposed to. I wanted to try it though. The other thing I want to try is I wanted to try to see how hard it would be with like if I took 3 grass Pokemon into the Let's Go feature against Mela. Because with One Sit Titan, like that Sit Titan got knocked out. I'm curious if it's possible to do that in 10 minutes with like the weakness and then get to the Mela fight. I think that would be a fun challenge. Maybe it's really easy. No clue. With One
I think
Sit
it
Titan,
depends how high level they are, to be honest, because I think it's partly types and it's partly level.
Yes. Yes. I think if
you can heal.
You can heal. So the question isn't like how fast are your Pokemon dying? It's how fast can you knock out, heal, knock out, heal. Can you do that in 10 minutes? I think that would be a fun challenge. Anyways, hey, if you made it to the end, comment you either which path you like the most, the Titan path, the Team Star path, or the Gym Leader path. That will be the YouTube comment. If you're listening on iTunes or Spotify or Google Podcasts, thank you for listening. If you can review the show, please review the show. That's it. That's all we have. Twitter is dying, so the Twitter handles are underneath our things if you want to follow before, maybe it disappears.
Hey, I'm on Hive. Come to Hive. It's buggy and it crashes, but I'm there.
Hey, everyone knows exactly what that experience is like. They played Scarlet and Violet.
Yep. I just decided to continue my life of crashing.
Otherwise, we will see you guys next week for another episode of Super Picnic Club. And our classic goodbye here. 3, 2, 1. Hasta
la vista. Oh, I didn't talk about the dreadful. Did you remember the bit where they're all like just after you finish the final bit of the story, they all do the star at the same time, but at different speeds?
At different speeds. Oh, awful. Awful.
It's like when you've never actually coordinated your dance in real life.
That is perfect.